Federal minimum wage laws ingrained the practice of tipping.
In 1938, the U.S. Congress passed the first minimum wage law. However, this law allowed states to set a lower wage for tipped workers. Additionally, the law had an exemption for businesses not engaged in interstate commerce, which included chain restaurants, rendering the law useless. After successful lobbying from labor activists, the U.S. Congress passed another law in 1966 that increased the tipped minimum wage alongside the regular minimum wage. The reform did not last, as in 1996, Congress decoupled the wage increases, and as of 2018, the tipped minimum wage is $13 an hour, as was decided upon in the 90s.
Anti-tipping laws were passed but quickly repealed.
All the backlash against tipping spurred legislators to take action. Starting in 1909, 6 states, Iowa, Washington, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia passed anti-tipping laws. However, these laws were not enforced even when they were on the books, and by 1926, they were all repealed. Over time, the anti-tipping movement waned as tipping became entrenched in American culture. Soon, tipping was even codified into federal law.
Restaurants and railway companies fought to keep tipping.
Paying workers little to nothing as a base wage cut costs significantly for restaurants, railroad companies, and other employers of tipped workers. For this reason, it's no surprise that these businesses fought hard to maintain the practice of tipping. The anti-tipping movement even evolved into labor strikes from hotel and restaurant workers who wanted decent wages. When the anti-tipping movement began to blow up in America at the turn of the 20th century, businesses pushed back in order to avoid paying their workers a normal wage. The hotels at the nexus of the strike used all the resources at their disposal to end the protests without giving in to strikers' demands, and eventually, all the strikes ended without inspiring change.
The restaurant boom necessitated poor servers who worked for tips.
Around the same time that tipping came into fashion, rural citizens were pouring into cities to take industrial jobs. Restaurants had long been a fixture of cities, but the influx of new residents increased the demand for dining establishments. Since factory workers needed quick, cheap meals, they offered a new market to restaurant owners. Industrial workers were relatively poor compared to past restaurant clientele, which necessitated the creation of a new line of restaurants called penny places. In order to turn a profit, these restaurants had to figure out a way to serve food at low prices without losing money. Because of this, restaurant owners embraced tipping, as the practice put the burden of paying servers on the customer rather than the establishment.
America's discomfort with tipping had racial undertones.
In the early 20th century, America's uneasy relationship with tipping was heavily intertwined with race relations. In 1902, the journalist John Speed wrote, "Negroes take tips, of course. One expects that of them is a token of their inferiority. But to give money to a white man was embarrassing to me." Other Americans objected to tipping African American workers for similar reasons. Segregationists famously refused to tip black servers, and on the one occasion when he did, it made the New York Times with an editorial on how travelers had to convert themselves into fountains playing quarters upon the circumambient Africans. Along with the practice of tipping, it seems as though America inherited the aristocratic notion of class distinction, which intersected with racial bigotry to make accepting or giving a tip seem beneath white citizens.
In the 19th century, many Americans viewed tipping as undemocratic and anti-American.
Though tipping quickly gained popularity in America, not all Americans were on board. Many citizens saw tipping as undemocratic and un-American. An anti-tipping movement developed in the United States, promoting the idea that paying workers was the duty of the employer, not the customer. Tipping was also considered classist, and many argued that it went against the social equality that America idealistically embodied. Tipping even emerged as part of political platforms in presidential elections, and William Howard Taft was considered the patron saint of the anti-tipping movement when he ran for president in the early 20th century.
Tipping originated in feudal Europe to reward the servants of aristocrats.
Despite its ubiquity in the States, tipping is not actually an American invention. It was first practiced in feudal Europe roughly 800–1400 CE and was rooted in the extensive aristocratic history of the continent. During this period, society placed great emphasis on distinguishing between high and low-class people, and tipping was a popular way of demonstrating one's superiority. Aristocrats would reward servants who went above their duties with a tip, and would even slip tips to the servants of their wealthy hosts while visiting friends. Tipping did not appear in America until the mid-1800s, when wealthy Americans brought the practice back from their European vacations. Americans have always had a tendency to emulate European trends, and by showing they knew how and when to tip, they strove to demonstrate their sophistication and worldliness.
Restaurants embraced tipping to avoid paying formerly enslaved people.
After the Civil War ended in 1865, racial tensions were extremely strained, as this was the first time all employers were expected to pay their African American workers. At the time, the United States government accepted a petition that allowed restaurant employees to work exclusively for tips. According to the ruling, restaurants did not have to pay their servers, as the tips they received meant that they weren't working for free and therefore weren't enslaved.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.